Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from Innova.Buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast today from Dallas in Texas, Scott Levy, who's the founder and CEO of Result Maps.
Yes.
To
There's another
get it,
company with the S in there.
yeah.
So I'm glad you
So
corrected
Result
that.
singular, Maps plural.
That's it.
Result Maps architect logical systems and performance platforms that help CEOs and their teams analyze their strategy, accelerate their results, and achieve their inspired best, as it says on their website. So welcome to the Innova.Buzz podcast, Scott. It's a great privilege to have you as my guest.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I've been looking forward to this conversation, especially after our pre-call, listening to the logical frameworks you've designed and particularly the way you approach coaching the AIs, which I find fascinating. Now, before we dive in, just a quick note for our listeners, particularly if you're a first-time listener to the Innova.Buzz podcast. On each episode, we like to have a candid and practical conversation with an amazing guest like Scott to find out how they create impact, how they build human connection in their work. And I like to unpack their knowledge, their attitudes, their values, and how those translate into action. So we kind of start with a big picture, dig into some stories, and go wherever the conversation takes us. At the end, I wrap up with our signature buzz round, the same three questions that I ask every guest. And I like to think of this as you having a seat at the table together with me and Scott, and we're all learning together. And as always, all the resources and highlights will be in the show notes of the episode, so you can revisit them at any time. Scott, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. As I said, now your mission to help the world be its inspired best is a really powerful goal and pretty all-encompassing. I'm particularly interested in the logical connection you've made between neuroscience and high-performance systems and how you then achieve that mission. Can you share more about what drives you in the mission and the impact you make in the world today, or you aim to make?
Very happy to. So it is, as you said, it's a big, high and mighty kind of sounding mission, but it's one that inspires us. And we believe the best way to make that impact on the world is to help teams and people work together more effectively in teams. We think that the best things that happen because groups of people team up, they come together, we get amazing things done as humans. And the best place to have impact on teams of humans is in business, because that's where the incentives are, that's where just about every human spends their time. And when we can positively impact that work environment for everyone, we get to live out our mission. And that includes using technology to give humans all kinds of superpowers, including technologies like AI.
Yeah, so I mentioned you have a bit of a background in neuroscience and you're deep into AI these days. Talk to us a little bit more about that, how you kind of integrate that, enhancing the teamwork between teams in a business, and the philosophy or the science of neuroscience and how that plays into those interactions and communication, and then where does AI fit into that scenario?
Yeah, for us, we're not a team of neuroscience researchers, but we have to apply neuroscience if we're going to be successful in our business. We use software, we use coaching, and what I've noticed is there are so many things about the way our brain works that we're unaware of. So in the normal office environment, the normal work environment, the frictions that we see come up are because people aren't aware of how their brains work, how we like to process information in our brains. And so it can feel like you're constantly swimming upstream. There's all these different things coming at you. People are feeling exhausted. 4 out of 5 people experience burnout. The average office worker is interrupted every 11 minutes, which means it can mean as much as 20 minutes to reset. And when you start tallying that stuff up, it's just the math is overwhelming. So the neuroscience and tying into neuroscience and reading and researching and seeing how we can apply these concepts in our software, in our support and coaching, it allows us to help people stop fighting those currents and be more like the surfer that's using, the riptide is also the current that can get you out into the best part of the break without paddling so much. I can't believe I'm on an Australian. A kid from Texas is on an Australian podcast talking surfing. What will happen next? But, it's about knowing what we need to be effective and setting ourselves up for success and actually engineering an environment around each individual that allows our brains to do what they do really well and getting rid of all the friction points that slow us down. I mean, I gave that example of the every 11 minutes interruptions. Most companies today have Slack or Teams or Discord or some derivation of instant messaging, and everybody's got the little version of the knock or whatever notification noise you have. Plus you have email. Plus you have text from family, although more and more people are using text for business. When you interrupt that much, you never really get into a flow state. And we really do a lot of work and trial and error and refinement to find ways to help people get into context and flow as quickly as they can, to lock in, to make better decisions so they can be their inspired best. Because it just plain sucks to be overwhelmed and overworked, which is what happens to most people. I can go on about this for the entire podcast, so I'm going to pause and see if you want me to go in any particular direction.
Yeah. It just reminds me of the early days of mobile phones. And I remember in the corporate world, in my corporate role, all the sales team in our company got BlackBerries. And the big complaint all the time was, I keep getting beeped or I keep getting pinged with a new email coming in on the BlackBerry. And I remember saying, just turn off the notifications and you decide when you look at your email. There's no rule
that
to
is
say
the
that.
key thing, right? I think a lot of people are afraid, especially in distributed environments where people are geographically distributed, even if they're in the same city, people are working from home. So they want to make sure they're managing the perception of being available. But at the same time, you have to get work done. You've got to take time to protect your focus and get things done. And unfortunately, the way our brains work, we have a peak time where we can really get things done, and that tends to be about 90 minutes after you wake up, according to the research I've seen. And you get about 3 to 4 hours of peak state, cognitive, creative, all the different cool buzzwords about the great things our brain is great at. You've got about 3 to 4 hours of that. And after that time is up, you get into kind of the afternoon doldrums or siesta time or whatever you like to call it. Our brains literally shift gears. I say literally. It's the metaphor that a lot of researchers use. You shift gears into a different state, and you're not able to push your brain back into that peak state. You just can't. So what people do is they end up pushing through that, staying up late, pushing harder, which further depletes the brain, makes it more and more difficult for your brain to recover. And people just get in these vicious cycles.
Yeah, and again, it reminds me of times back in my corporate career where, particularly on big conferences and that, we'd have like the keynote address would be first thing of the morning, and then there'd be a bunch of lectures, and then there'd be a lunch break, and often it'd be a big lunch with heavy pasta so that all the blood would be rushing to the stomach for digestive purposes in the afternoon. And the first afternoon session would either be another lecture, which would be deadly, or it would be, okay, now have a breakout session. Now we want you to contribute to all the things that you've heard in those presentations of the morning, and this is where we're going to develop the strategy and where everybody's going to come together and have cool ideas and share cool ideas. And
It's why when I speak, I always try to get the first time available The morning
Yeah.
time is best. People are awake. They're paying attention. Their brains are, our brains are just more receptive. And there's things you have to do during that. But yeah, those slogs are, it's why they feel so tiring.
Hmm.
And it's why, everybody does so many crazy things to try to, um, in a lot of cases, just balance that out. You feel fried mentally because you are.
Hmm. All right. Well, I mean, one of the big contributors to that, I guess, is technology. In a sense, you mentioned Slack and Teams and so on, where we're constantly on chat, and that's where I see that as really important, particularly for distributed teams. That it's easy to have those things, but I've also seen. Well, first of all, that is a risk. You talked about the constant interruptions. I've also seen it used in other ways. So, talk to us a little bit about ways where that can be turned around and used in a way that actually enhances that teamwork, minimises those interruptions, and makes use of those peak times.
Absolutely. And, if it's not clear and obvious to your listeners and viewers, I run a software company. I'm all about technology. I've got 2 different computers here at my desk, 4 monitors between them. So I'm a big fan of technology. It's how you use the technology that makes a difference. And those human choices are what make the difference. Uh, Slack is great. It's a great place to organize, or Teams can be a great place to organize your internal communications. But there's certain things it's lousy at. And what we do in our software is we help everyone. I'm going to take a step back. The challenge I've seen, decades of this, and I've been around, sounds like pretty close to as long as you have. I've seen the evolution. My corporate career started right as the internet was coming online, and I've seen not a lot of change in the choices and decision criteria for like how you develop plans and execute. What I have seen change is the speed at which the information's coming at people. And the problem is most of the ways that we work in project planning and productivity all are rooted in 1920s manufacturing, right? There, how do you engineer a better industrial production line? Edward Deming and all the different writers that have written, and even all of our methodologies harken back to physical production, which
Mm.
goes at a different pace, has a different pace of change, certainly. It's not like you're building a car and, oh, wait, we just realized we need to change the design of the car midway through, right? Which can happen in projects that aren't in just the physical world, a marketing project, technology of any form. But even if you look at things like Agile is rooted in manufacturing. Scrum, that Scrum comes from a paper that was research done on a bunch of manufacturing companies. Everything's pretty well rooted in manufacturing, and we don't live in the world that industrial manufacturing as the end-all technology was designed for. So we have to be able to change. We have to be able to adapt. We have to realize that information comes at us much more quickly than it did a 1920s or even 1950s or 60s production line. Changes are coming quickly. There's disruptions. There's, geopolitical unrest. There's now and then a COVID, shutdown and things of that nature. Those are the big ones, but the small ones are all those little interrupts through Teams and Slack. So what we do through our software is we say, look, the problem isn't automating more shiitake coming at you. The problem is clarity about what you're trying to get done that's most impactful, how you're going to make decisions about what you'll say no to and what the sequence of things you need to work on will be, and then how you deal with the different changes and challenges that come up amongst your team. And that sounds very abstract, but they're very specific things we do in our software. We've got tools that help people get an overview of everything they've got going on very simply. They can sort and filter that using an area in what we call their personal command center, where they're prioritizing, sequencing, staying on top of things. And then we have a suite of tools that help eliminate meetings. Meetings are another time suck. So that you've just got a couple of very highly focused meetings that we've got automated dashboards for and people rate. So you've got the tools you need to make decisions quickly and go get back into flow as quickly as you can. Now, sometimes you're going to have days where you have to be in communication mode, but again, we can help focus that communication in a way that people can take in and focus how you're thinking about your business in a way that's easy to take in. So a lot of what we do is, helping people kind of chisel away at the rock so they can see the sculpture more effectively, taking out the things they don't need and making sure that the shape of what they're looking at fits the way our brain works. And I can unpack that even more, but that's the high level.
Yeah, I'm curious because I guess thinking back before we had AI and maybe 10 years back, there were high performance individuals around that had the ability to do most of those things. And they generally ended up, or perhaps still are.
They do pretty well, right?
They're achieving a lot of things, right? I'm guessing that your software is making tools available for everybody to get to that level. It's not just for those few individuals that have the ability, the talent to do that really well.
That's exactly it. And I think the name of the individual that's coming up for me is Roger Bannister. I think he was the first runner to break the
4-minute mile.
4-minute mile. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And then once he did, before that, that was an outlier thing. Now, bunches of people have done it because they understand what was behind it. What we're doing and the way we see our role is we're uncovering the principles that can help you be successful, but also do it in a way that doesn't require what some of those individuals had to do because they were figuring it all out for themselves. So you can live a happy life. You can, your family can know your name and hang out with you and all those things that I think certainly when I was younger, it was just thought, well, if you're gonna have any interest outside of work, you're not going to be successful. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that everybody can live just the absolute chilled out lifestyle necessarily and still get things done. But if we're just avoiding the, for lack of a better word, the kind of dumb or avoidable mistakes, that's what I'll call them, the avoidable mistakes that slow us down, we can certainly be happier and have more free time. And if you look at what causes stress and the way our brains react to stress, stress is a continuum. So I can digress here if you want to talk a little bit of neuroscience from the guy that's a software guy, not a neuroscientist. But the way to think about stress that I got from David Rock, you've got two poles. And let's say over here you've got fight, flight, or freeze is one extreme. And the other extreme is complete euphoria, like everything's good. I'm just going to sit here on the couch, eating bonbons, watching my favorite sci-fi or whatever, you like to do when you're chilling, reading a book, whatever. Well, at either end of the spectrum, there's no peak performance, right? Because if you're totally satisfied, you're not really stretching or achieving much. But by the same token, if you're in fight, flight, or freeze, the blood literally is routed away from your prefrontal cortex, which is where you do all the cool stuff in our brain, the thinking, the creativity, the problem solving. It's routed toward the fight, flight, or freeze stuff, in particular the fight or flight. So it's going to your muscles, and your brain is making sure that those are the parts of your body that, or your whole limbic system, that those are the parts of your body that are getting the resources. So when we're working really hard and those old ideologies of just work, 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 you tend to go toward that fight, flight, or freeze. But actual peak state, all the research says, is when you're not quite in the middle of those two extremes, but just to the optimistic side of stressed. That's where you get into what researchers call eustress or good stress. And that's where you're going to find peak state. So the more we can do to engineer that and not do things that are going to push us into stress, the more successful we'll be.
Yeah, it reminds me, is kind of a bit tenuous, this example, but it's the fight or flight thing. We were in Japan recently and we were hiking, and one of the things we were very cognizant of in the area we were hiking, and they've had lots of bear attacks this year. They seem to be increasing a lot, and there were bears in this area. So we were very cognizant of doing all the right things to make sure that the bears were aware of our presence and hopefully doing what bears are supposed to do, which is avoid human contact there.
Right.
So there was sort of that sense of fight or flight, but completely out of the blue, right in front of us, a big snake crossed our path, and we stood there looking at it thinking, oh, look at that snake, it's beautiful. It sort of was yellow and black stripes and very, very attractive.
Triangle head. Kind of
yeah, very attractive looking snake, and sort of slithered away across the path, didn't take much notice of us, but we were sort of standing there thinking, this is fantastic. Now, my wife is absolutely petrified of snakes, but unusually, uncharacteristically, she was standing there saying, look at that, look at all the colours, isn't that fascinating? And then when we arrived at our destination that evening, I kind of got on the internet and said, what snakes are there in Japan? And we found this snake, and it's highly poisonous. So I said, if we had known that, our response would have been completely different.
Yeah. Avoiding the bad things is always good. But I think that's also, that's where technology can help. For us, we find that helping people get and provide more clarity. I mean, the number of times you're going to have seen good people that want to do right by each other just have complete meltdowns, or the companies going in the wrong direction. It's because the communication is terrible. And then as the effects of that bad communication ratchet up, you get more and more stress. It gets even more difficult. So if we can give people tools that make it much simpler to communicate just on a day-to-day basis, and give them the tools they need just to check in weekly. How are we doing individually and as a team? Are we on track to our plans? How are we tracking that? That's where we can make a real difference, because that information is what allows you to go, I need a couple hours this Tuesday to turn off Slack or Teams and just focus on this thing. And by the way, since I know that I need peak time, I'll do this first thing in the morning because it's most important. And then there's so many other little things. We came across something today where we found a little bug in a new feature release, which happens. But the old way of doing it would have been, dang it, my brain goes, this is going to derail this other thing we're working on because somebody's got to pick that up, and they could be working on this other cool AI-driven feature. Well, we could give the bug now to some AI tools. Not that the AI just takes it yet and runs with it, but it allows the person driving the task to just go very quickly between 4 or 5 different agents that, for lack of a better word, that are taking care of what needs to be taken care of. And then say, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and try this that you've recommended. We've set up our context. And it's a lot of the same things we use to communicate with humans, interestingly enough. What's the context? What's the background? Let's make sure we have the right information. Now let's form some ideas about how we're going to move forward. But my point with this is, it could have been a stressor on another day. Instead, it was like, yay, team, we once again showed that if we'll invest in learning to use these technologies the right way, it's a massive lift.
Yeah. There's one thing you said there that I think is really fascinating, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this in terms of using AI, and that's I hear a lot of people talking about, hey, it's the output you get depends on the quality of the input you give. So there's frameworks to prompt it, and context is a big one in the framework, and being really specific about what it is you want and giving it some historical context, giving it examples. Here's the output, here's an example output I want, but I want it for this other question. The thing I don't hear a lot of people talking about is you can actually view it as a training ground for being a better communicator with other people. Because a lot of those things, I know I often ask something very quickly. I'll ask one of the AIs that, and I type it in. I think that's total garbage what's come back. And then I look at what I asked and I go, well, yeah, I wasn't really very clear. I didn't really give it enough.
One of our development leads loves that about it, because he's continually telling me, like, when you give me clear info, it's so easy. And he's not the only one. Like, several people on our team, like, sometimes you gloss over it and you don't unpack. And I'm aware of that. But now what we're able to do is we're also able to use the AIs to help us unpack more effectively. And yes, it makes you a better communicator because you're getting in the habit of it. You're developing the patience versus the I want it now and just kicking, which I can do. I can kick and scream like a little kid, just like, why aren't you just doing what I want you to do? Which is a little easier to, kind of learn and get tired of with an AI than it is with another human.
Yeah. It's funny. I did actually recently. I got frustrated with an AI, and I went back and I said, oh, "Come on, why do you keep going in circles here?" And wasn't I clear enough? And it sort of always comes back and says, "I understand your frustration." And I say, well,
and it's fascinating how much work is done, seemingly in their responses, and just them trying to appease the human at the other end. I mean, that's one of the more interesting things to examine. But I do find, it's my tip if you haven't figured this out already, if one model is giving you going in a circle like that, step one for us is always cut that conversation off, get a prompt to restart it differently. You can also go back and, as you probably know, try again, like to a different point in the convo. But a lot of times if we're seeing the same result or too similar of a result, we pass it to one of the other LLMs.
Yeah.
And I'll switch fast.
I've got a system that connects to all of them, and you can actually just click a button to say regenerate with another.
Oh, nice. I find that may be the way, for me to go. What I'm finding is I learn so much personally if I'm the one interacting with it. I learn a lot from how what I say comes back to me. And it was always the same. So I in the early 2000s, I was already doing work, actually before that, with distributed teams, like very, very early in the game, back when Skype was its own company, and we had all kinds of crazy ways to try to connect. But it was the same thing then. Like, you can get really good, or you could get really good at delegating and writing specs because you had to send it kind of over the waves in the ether, over your interwebs, and somebody would get it and you're sleeping and they can't ask you questions. So then in the morning you see like what they got. So this just accelerates that cycle. I find it so interesting. Most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I curse at it too.
Yeah. I think the other good thing is because we're not dealing with another person. So if I ask you, hey, Scott, can you do this for me? And here's what I want you to do, and here's what I'm looking for. And you might come back and say, oh, can you explain that a little bit more? I didn't quite get that. Or what do you mean by this? So we might have that conversation, but then you go away and you do something. With the AI, I find it much easier to give the instruction, but then say, is any part of that unclear, or have I missed some information that you actually need to complete this task? Which in a way is kind of showing more vulnerability than perhaps most people, certainly that I might show to another person. And in that sense, you kind of get some input back before you actually have finalized the query that says, well, actually, I need these bits of information as well to complete what you've asked me.
Nice. Yeah, we in both our delegation to humans and delegation to AI, when we do documents, we like a section for issues and questions, because one of the challenges with AI, they can ask some questions, man. They can just keep the questions coming at you. On alternate Tuesdays and leap years, how will you handle this if somebody uses their left pinky, right? I don't know. Log that in the issues and let's move on. We'll come back to it if we have time.
Yeah.
But I find that, I want to be able to say I've been fortunate to have great team members that have really pushed me at times to unpack information more. And that's true, but I've still gone through some frustrations with the AIs at different times where you're just like, you just did this amazing thing over here. Why are you doing this dumb thing there that's like so much more basic? But at this point now, my questions are always, okay, how can we build on this? Because if you can unpack everything you're doing with AI now, like, this is an incredible time. And we all want I'll use the Star Wars. You've ever seen those Death Star sets and Legos for Star Wars? Right? They're like a gajillion pieces and they take 4 years to put together, whatever it is. We all want that Death Star. Like, that's where we want AI to be. And some forms of AI are there, self-driving cars and things like that. But for the things that we're doing in our daily work, a lot of times we're just figuring out the shapes of the Legos.
Yeah.
And if we will embrace it with that type of mindset, you start to be able to put together some pretty cool Lego sets. I date myself because I love me some Legos.
Yeah.
But the idea of Lego, for anybody that doesn't know, great story there, mission-driven company. But they've got the brick, like one brick that you can plug in to create these systems of play, is what the original family member called it when they came up with it. And I think that if we'll embrace AI the same way, just like good software developers do this, you build up a base of functions. With AI, you can build up your agents. I just think the scope of those agents has to be much, much tighter than most people realize. Like, you will do this one thing. Because what happens, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is as the conversation, that window of information, that context window, as it gets bigger, there's more things to confuse the AI. It has more information to sift through. And there's a point at which they've done studies, it just starts to tank in terms of its quality. It unravels, which happens to humans too if you overwhelm us with information. But it's fascinating.
All right. Yeah, that's I like the Lego analogy. I often use that in various things. I often use it in project management. I say, well, what's the Lego brick we need to build, and then we'll build the next one and start to put that on top of one on the next one. Yeah, I don't know what it's like these days, whether today's generation is on Lego, but I know I grew up with Lego, and my kids grew up with Lego, and I think the next generation grew up with Lego as well, but I'm not sure where we're at now.
Oh, I think Legos will always, well, I say always, but I mean, like, we got these hand-me-downs from my sister-in-law. Hey, Lauren, shout out Lauren. Like, these buckets, and the boys are still like, if we should give those up yet, and they're in their 20s.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've got buckets in the cupboards here as well.
But that's the amazing thing about rolling up your sleeves and starting to work with, the command line tools and the different tools that are coming out in the web interfaces, is you can build these purpose-built, wonderful, wonderful little helpers. I mean, I've gotten so frustrated with the state of CRM, with customer relationship management. I actually have project in Grok, and its whole job is to, on a weekly basis, one helps me track our pipeline, and the other helps me track my business development activities, because I just got tired of trying to learn everybody's form interface. So it understands the rules. I tell it what I did. It tallies it, tracks it with the right person. Just fascinating.
Yeah, there's so much there, and I wonder how many of these legacy systems start to become redundant, although a lot of them are incorporating AI into their system, right? But CRM is a classic one. I've always had a love-hate relationship, because I always wondered how much time you spend inputting the information and whether the return you're getting from that time spent on the
Everybody's
inputs.
right. I've never heard one person say, I love this part of the job. Now, when you have the data and you can run the analytics, yes, but I think we're going to see that. The LLM that I find best able, and before I jump into this, let me just say the common theme here is use technology to remove friction, not create it. Right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, as I'm reflecting on our conversation, that's the theme. But one place where I've found there to be friction sometimes on car rides. I listen to books, sure, but in my age, I've listened to a lot of books and read a lot. So if I have other things going on in my brain, what do I do with it? Well, now I talk to Grok. Grok is great at conversing just enough to capture ideas. Then you can go pull out the transcript and hand that to your custom-built transcript organizer that can pull out the right information and pass that off to the next agent or person. And it's fantastic. My father used to buy these little bitty cassette recorders. You talk into them, but the problem with that, because I've used it on my phone as well, what do you do with it? It used to be you had to pull the transcript out, and what am I going to do with the transcript? Well, now maybe AI can help me. You can just skip it now. Just talk to Grok. You got the whole thing. And I'm sure that Claude and I would think ChatGPT will get there as well.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating application, I think. I mean, I know I've got an application that where I can record and it transcribes, and then I can tell it, give this back to me in various different formats. So I can ask it to write it in a social media post, or I can ask it to write it in a report with bullet point lists of the key points and the actions. So depending on what it is I've recorded, I can ask it to revamp the information in various things, which is an AI based, but to connect different bits is another level.
100%. And find, I mentioned like neuroscience is the cool sounding collegiate term, but I mean, a lot of what we do is we build software, we watch people use it, and then we try to make it easier to use. And one thing that I've seen again and again is when you can put things into a conversation versus these forms that you have to learn how to fill out, right? It's easier. Now, some people go like so overblown on the conversation that the conversation's free form and there's too much for an LLM or the AI to figure out. But what we found is if we keep the context tight, we can help people through the kinds of things that often frustrate everybody. Clarity on our vision in concrete terms. How do we tie that vision directly, from the high level? Like we talked about, like we have a mission. Well, that ties to our beliefs and why we do what we do, but it also ties to a 3-year vision, which is concrete and has revenue targets and a lot of detail, 16 different dimensions. Well, that ties to a 1-year plan, and that ties to a quarterly plan. And that's what we use to make our decisions week in and week out. That process sounds really daunting, and people used to go to day-long consulting sessions and pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with it. We've got a set of AI tools where it asks you some questions, you confirm a couple things, and okay, we got that step. Let's get the next one. And it becomes fun because you're seeing your ideas unpacked. you're seeing what was in your head that you might have overthought ways to communicate or got distracted by all the 50 other things in your mind you're worried about other people thinking. We can pull that in the software. We can bring that out in a way that everybody can lean into. And that's really powerful, right? That's where I think these tools and using these different ways to interact with AI just gets really interesting really fast.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I'm just aware of the time. We could go on talking software, AI, and tools and neuroscience for ages. But yeah, I think it's a good point now, though, to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round. And it is focused on AI, but it's focused on AI from the point of view of what are the human aspects of it, and how do we maximize it in human terms. So I'm sure that you'll have some really interesting insights for us. So you all set?
I think.
All right. So first one is on innovation. What's the most innovative way you've seen AI used to strengthen human relationships?
The most innovative way, I mean, there's so many. I mean, the simplest is like we use it just to help us structure context so that people aren't getting these like clipped messages of, do this thing now. No, here's some background, here's some context, here's the success criteria we have. You can go figure it out on your own so you have autonomy and agency. Like that's been super helpful. The one I still love, though, I mentioned already, I can be in my car and Grok and I can do whatever. I mean, I've had Grok research things for me. I've had Grok just be a scribe. And suddenly time where you think it's not productive time, I look forward to now. There's some time in the car where I'm just like, this is really going to help me. I'm going to be prepped for that meeting that our team is having on this subject. Prepped for my neuroscience talk. We did some extra research on that. I think, so for the listeners, I did a workshop leveraging neuroscience to accelerate your ability to get things done, but I was able to research that and come up with different ways to communicate those ideas to people. So those are my favorite because they affected me personally.
Yeah. Well, that's they're always powerful ones that you've experienced yourself. Excellent. All right. Well, the next one is about your own experience, the best thing you've done, and maybe that second part of the answer there is the answer to this one. The best thing you've done to integrate AI in a way that enhances human experience.
We began taking all of our forms, and we've got some cool interactive forms, and just putting them in not just a pure, it doesn't look exactly like, say, a Chat GPT or one of the other LLMs, but within a certain framework, when it has that feel, it feels much more magical. And we can use the amount of coding grunt work that the AI is taking off the plate as we do it. I mean, it's helping our engineering team, it's helping our users, it's helping everybody come together more effectively, because what we're doing is we're creating these dialogues, and not always directly with each other, but everybody's involved in this, and it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's, I sometimes think, I've played around with, we've got a big intake form that you probably remember from for the podcast information, and I've played around with trying to get that into a conversation, but at the moment I haven't quite got it right yet, so it's not ready for prime time. But yeah, I think taking forms and turning them into conversations is, it's consistent with my whole philosophy that, the podcast itself is about having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, when you look at, just for a person to learn a new software platform, which in this current age we're in, it's one more thing to learn. And nobody's going, okay, I want one more thing to learn that may not enrich me. It's just basically somebody else's arbitrary rules. But so much actually goes into teaching people how to use software, even if it's the most intuitive software ever. when you can replace that with a relatively smart interface that's told what its boundaries are and has the clear guidelines, it's mind-blowing, like how much work and how much cognitive load that takes off the table.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, the final question is one that I puzzle over quite a bit, and that's in this day and age of AI, and you mentioned, nobody wants to learn software simply for the sake of learning software and for questionable return. What is it that people should be developing as skills in this age of AI that kind of differentiates them?
I mean, I heard Mark Cuban say this. He's like, if I was starting out now, I'd be listening to every podcast, reading every book, trying to do everything I could to get to know it. And I think that while that sounds a bit obsessive, wherever it is that you're interested in working, if you can find ways to apply AI and just start to develop the skill to interact with it now, it's incredibly powerful. The way that I got into technology, I didn't initially get a CS degree, but I had been programming since I was, a preteen. And so I just raised my hand to go through and take over like these massive code bases that nobody wanted. Like it was the bottom of the barrel because other people's code nobody likes other people's code. And I was like, this is great. I'll learn how it works. And that was a big part of how I was able to accelerate my career quickly. Well, now you can do that even faster because you can bring the AI in with you and start to learn what questions to ask it. If you're, you can just pick the application. There's very few areas I can see it not touching because worst case, it can go help you do research. Worst case, it can help you take your ideas and think about them from different angles and pick them apart. I even saw Dharmesh Shah, who's great for anyone who wants to follow, his CTO and co-founder of HubSpot. He was marveling because his son is an aspiring science fiction writer. So his son is feeding information about the world he's creating to an AI and then querying it like, well, what would happen if this and that happened? Like using it to create these dialogues. And we've done that with I've done that a lot with creative writing as well. There's almost no way you can't use it. So wherever there's a friction point you have getting from where you are today to the reality you want to manifest in the world, if you'll pick kind of the heaviest friction point, the bottleneck, there's going to be a way to double click there and just pick apart one aspect of it, one tiny thing that AI can help you with. And when you get that done, you'll find the next thing. When you get that done, you'll find the next thing. And it's that Lego approach I mentioned. Now's a great time to understand it because it's going to get to a point where people who are born years from now won't have seen it come together, and you don't get the same understanding. Like I got to see Windows and Mac come together. I've got a deeper understanding. This is an incredible time. I mean, we're living in such an incredible time to develop your understanding of these things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think the idea of trying it out, and I mean, even something simple, and I did this in the very early days. I said, well, here's all the things I do. Where can I use you? And it came back with about a dozen ideas, of which maybe half I'd thought of beforehand based on what I knew it could do. But the other half was, you can do that. That's really interesting. And then I started exploring those things as well. And as you say, that then opened up other ideas that I hadn't thought of up until then.
It's, fantastic for all these uses. We might talk about it after the podcast. I'm thinking to myself, there's a couple of tools I want to make sure that you're aware of for a couple of the things you mentioned that may be helpful. But excellent. I think even what you just said, right? The dialogue, this self-reflection, it's not that the AI is making decisions for you. It becomes a tool to reflect. and to run. Einstein's famous for doing these thought experiments, and we have even more. We have help.
Yeah.
You can do so much with it.
Yes, that's right. The reflection part. I think that's one of the most powerful bits. A lot of people talk about you can do various things. You can get information. You can write blog posts, generate images, generate videos. But I think the really powerful one is if I give you some information, can you tell me where the gaps are in my thinking? Can you reflect back to me, what am I assuming that perhaps I'm not aware of? Or if here's an article I've written, can you tell me this about my writing style here, and can you tell me if this is going to appeal to a mass audience, or do I need to adjust the writing style, and those kind of things, that self-reflection type thing, almost like a coach skilled in all kinds of different areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're reminding me that I'm seeing so many incredible uses like this. I mean, so many well-developed, purpose-built for like just one purpose, to take in your voice, for example, or we're recording this into script. Like we've got some avatars that we just love into script, and they're just amazing things that's happening. But with us using the avatars, our team has realized we don't have to be the sole source. It's not like you have to go script something and read it and figure out everything else. You can just give it the script, choose an avatar, and just become the editor. You don't have to be the editor, the writer, the camera person, all those things. The AI can actually help you do more by doing less.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Scott. This has been a fabulous conversation. Now, where can people find out more about result maps, about you, about the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Yeah, so resultmaps.com. That's one result, many maps, RESULTMAPS.com. We're there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. Scott Levy on LinkedIn. Look for the one that's connected to Result Maps, because there's apparently a lot of Scott Levys in the world. Yeah, and if any of your listeners want to check out our neuroscience workshop, we've got a special offer that they're welcome to, and you can always get a free trial of our software.
Excellent, great, and we'll have all those links in the show notes, as I mentioned earlier. Now, as we wrap things up, Scott, what specific actions would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today?
I would list one area that is a sore spot for you in your day-to-day. It could be at home, it could be at work, and go either to Perplexity or Grok or somebody that can do deep research on the web and ask it for possible ways to solve. Because I've gotten answers for everything from movies to watch with my wife to meals to make. I don't cook. To figuring out in this brand new world where software is exploding, what software tool to use, or even how can I unpack what is an MCP server? Just to pick a technical term. Whatever that friction point is, go double click on that. And then the other thing I'd encourage you to do I get two, or is it just one?
Yeah, go for two.
I'm going to go for two. Like when you wake up, tweak your routine and find a way to block time out in that first 3 to 4 hours of your day just to get your most important things done. And yeah, if you've got kids, you've got to navigate around that. And if you've got work meetings, maybe you have to wake up a little earlier. But I promise you, if you'll do that, you will see massive impact. Far greater than you will staying up late.
Excellent. Well, there's a couple of really great, I won't say easy to implement, but very clear actions that, simple.
Not easy, but simple.
Simple, yeah. That all we have to do is start. So thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, Scott. I've really enjoyed our conversation. really learnt a lot, and I'm looking forward to some of those tips you've got for me after we stop the recording. And all the best for the future, and please do stay in touch.
It's a pleasure. Look forward to it.